Welcome to Restoring the Mind, where we discuss the mind and brain and all its domains. My name is Khalid Mahmood. Today's topic is why global communism will fail. My guest this week is once again Thomas Pochari. He writes on World Affairs Monthly. Hi, Tom. Welcome to Restoring the Mind.
Hey, good to talk to you again, Khaled.
Okay, Tom, let's start. My first question. Why do you think the global elites attempt to Sovietize the West, right, and bring in it Soviet
Yeah.
type of system in the West will not succeed?
Well, it's probably going to come to be a surprise to most people that the elite in Washington D.C. or in Western Europe want to organize society kind of based on the Soviet model because the Soviet model failed, right? Everybody knows it failed, but
Exactly.
but it's really strange to consider this new way of thinking in Washington. For example, you got the climate change, you got all these crazy regulations, really kind of overbearing attempt to control your life. We all know what I'm talking about. So I tend to think that overall the the and I said this before in my interviews with you that knowledge and information are going to spread and really grow very powerful, and so you cannot expect people to take on this really you know, how do I want to be polite, but it's kind of kooky, kind of insane way of organizing society where you really remove the individual's rights, which sprung up a couple of hundred years ago. That's what Western society is all about. The rest of the world had no conception of that. So individual rights and Soviet society or communist society or even socialist society is removing those rights to a great degree. So it's going to fail. And I've argued, I think I've said, that I've got this theory of three phases of history. So when the third phase does kick in, and I really don't know when that's going to be, but we're in the transition from phase two to phase three. When it kicks in, everybody will really be with their brain, powerful brain, independently considering the phenomena out there, analyzing, thinking, being the individual that they're designed to be. Because Khaled, I know you believe in God, and you're Islamic and everything. So everybody will have their own perspective, and they will be competing with each other. And I think that will be in a way, that will be like the pinnacle of human society because everybody will be equally endowed with brain power and with information, really free, information that's basically cost free, and this will lead to incredible innovation, incredible bursts in knowledge. Well, you see what I'm saying, right? I think that's the answer to the question. It cannot. It's communism was this Karl Marx. I mean, it was this idea that the market, the typical market in a small town, would be dominated by the rich guy, and the rich guy would start exploiting the people he employed, et cetera, et cetera. So Karl Marx said, well, look, you got to defend the guys who's being exploited, and of course that's correct. But you see, that's because the exploited people didn't have knowledge,
Hmm.
right? They didn't have
Sure.
knowledge. They didn't have information. So once information and knowledge do, and maybe it's hard for people to understand because it's so intangible. It probably is, but for example, we got to repair one of our computers here. We need knowledge to do it. It's proving to be a little tricky, but we can buy on eBay the part, but we'll manage to do it, and because we're pretty tech savvy here, but still you need to understand how to get the knowledge, and I'm just suggesting that it right now and beginning right now and in the future, getting that knowledge will not really be all that difficult. And like I said in the previous interview, back 500 years ago, Johann Gutenberg in 1453 or whenever it was, about that time, he made it so much less costly to become literate, to get information. Information was just exploding all over the place. And that's why we are living so well today because of that event and probably no other event, that event alone. And the societies that rejected the printing press, like for example the Chinese society, and I must say the Islamic society too, they all became very backward over time. And by the 20th century, Western Europe had basically taken over the whole world, and everybody else is looking like a loser. Well, they're not losers; they just were victims of this situation. So that's the answer to the question.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, how do you react?
It does make sense, but the thing is, at the moment, there is the internet there is the information there, and a lot of people they seem to be misguided. And
Yes, they are.
for example, like Facebook, that's introducing the metaverse and everything. So people are
Yeah.
kind of not really making the best use out of it. There is no way for them to get the freedom at the moment. Everybody is subjugating to whatever the system is.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
But
system at the
remember,
moment seems to be,
okay,
not failing, but rather getting stronger. But your argument is that it will fail.
it will fail. It will fail, and perhaps it is frustrating to watch. It is. However, I do see the erosion of power of these institutions. These oppressive institutions. You know which ones I'm talking about? They're all over the
Yeah,
place, and they're
yeah,
just each day I see evidence that the power of those institutions are being eroded. For example, it's just amazing to realize that let's see, I read this today. A poll was taken, for example, in the United States here, the poll was taken to see who would be prevailing or who would be winning in the midterm elections in 2022. So for Congress, federal elections, and not presidential, but midterm. And it looks like the Republicans are just trouncing their Democrats, and probably because of knowledge. Now, I'm not saying the Republicans are any better; they're not, but they are for more market freedom, very likely. The Democrats are now representing kind of a socialist way of life. So I think you're going to see more and more effort to really kind of I should say, these institutions are oppressive, and there's going to be more and more effort by the public to remove these institutions totally from their life.
okay.
No government, no nation state. All right, I'm sure that people are frustrated, and it's kind of confusing, and it's intangible, but it is. You agree that the power of these institutions is eroding?
Yes, I do. I do.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
at the same time, coming back to where we are in 2021,
yeah,
and that is where the listeners I want to know the answers to, is at the moment, especially last year, the governments all over the world, they kind of, you know, together, everybody collectively, kind of brought about such a propaganda at
yeah,
phenomenal, the fear was so much that they kind of
yeah,
everybody agreed to house in a way, just lock themselves in the houses.
yeah.
Okay, do you see this kind of fear eroding anytime soon, or will this fear kind of continue to, because the Soviets kind of stayed on, the fear stayed on as long as the communism was still there, and we are only kind of at the beginning stage of the communism being
Yeah.
implemented in the West. So what about this fear thing, where people are
Well,
kind of
yeah,
first there was a fear about the COVID, and now we got the fear of this climate, where the climate is supposed to kind of the planet is heating up, and the planet is kind of going to be so much warmer that nobody's going to be able to
hmm
live in it. It's going to
hmm
be end of humanity and blah blah blah.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
all this kind of fear that's being used.
right. Yes, yeah, I agree. And uh, I suppose, I'm just going to have to once again say that the power of information and knowledge will overcome. I mean, right now we have building up inflation, right? Inflation all over the world, probably mostly in the Western world.
Yes.
So you're seeing it in the UK. I've got evidence of it right now. I was on the phone with Comcast, and they're telling me they're going to raise the fees that I pay for internet service and telephone. So, and a lot, they're going to raise it a lot. So I'm thinking to myself, well, all right, Tom, you're going to see people really get pretty well disturbed or angry, or I don't know what kind of emotions they're going to have, but confused, angry, disturbed about rising prices and their failure to be able to pay the bills. Remember, I said that in my previous interview? You know,
Yes.
right now in the Western world, people have been able to always pay the bills. And whenever there was a recession or a cutback in activity, it bounced back after about 9 months. Now, the last, typical 9 months, 1 year, 2 years at the most, it always happened like that. But the last time we had a big cutback in activity, which was in 2007, 2008, you know, it took us years and years to recover. So it is the end of economic growth. It is the end of the debt growth. It is the end of everything. And I know people don't probably think, oh, Pochari's kind of unhinged, and he's saying it's the end. But you'll see. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take, but 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But the debt is not going to grow much more. It's going to grow. I gave you the figures. I don't have to repeat them. I don't think the debt's going to grow much more than 5 or 10 years more. And after that, it's going to start shrinking. So, and people are just going to have to become very resourceful and resilient, and they will, because they're not going to want to be. You mentioned how important hope is. They're going to want to restore every ounce of hope that they have, and once they get kind of depressed about the situation, they're going to have to respond, and I think they will respond, but we're not there yet. See, we're still not at the bottom, right? Nowhere near the bottom. So I think when we do talk about it, we have to be at the bottom, and people will say, "My goodness, this is horrible," and then they're gonna have to respond, and they probably will respond. Otherwise, you die.
Yes, I think in our chat yesterday we talking to each other and mentioned that before we hit the bottom, the inflation more likely will surpass the
Yeah,
20%
yeah,
twenty
oh, yeah,
percent mark.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was kind of stunned that Comcast. Everybody knows who Comcast is. They want $100. I pay $140 right now, $145 for internet service and two telephone lines, and I get about 85, 90 megabytes per second speed, internet speed, and that's okay. That's a pretty good deal. But they want $100 more. They're going to up my speed a little bit to 100, but so that they want $100 more. So just like that. That probably due to the inflation. Anyway, it's all about the oil. It's all about information. It's all about debt. And these institutions that we've been building up and fortifying for 500 years are all going to basically fall apart and destroy themselves. If we're just at the very beginning. Most people are going to say, "Oh, Pochari, come on, the world's going to go on and we're going to have this." But I disagree. I mean, you have the internet. My sons never went to school. They didn't need some instructor. They can go to the internet,
Hmm.
right?
True.
I told you everything is changing because of the internet and the low cost of getting information. I mean, 20 years ago or 30, I couldn't do anything without consulting some expert, right? You have to go to a middleman to do something. Now you just go to the internet.
True.
So that's my answer. I mean, I think these Ashkenazi Jews who really believe in communism, they want to rule. They want everybody else to be basically poor. They want to have control over everybody, and they're just desperate to
But
find.
they do have the control. They control the
They do,
governments. They
they do,
control the money.
they
They
do,
control the
and they
everything.
control everything. They control the banks, the money, everything, everything. But I heard I saw on BBC, or no, it was CNN or wherever it was. I saw that this guy named he's a Minneapolis president of the Minneapolis Fed president, Kashkari. He used to work at his name is Kashkari, something like that. He may
Mm.
be Indian. I can't remember his ethnic, but he's American. And he Minneapolis Fed president. And he said, "Oh, he says to me, or not to me, of course, says to everybody, CNN, he says, inflation will subside in about a year, right? Okay. Now, how does he know that, right? I mean, this is another one of these. I'm a big shot. I'm an expert. I worked at Goldman Sachs. I make $2 million a year, and therefore my opinion is really, really good. No, come on, it's a joke. It's a scam. But he doesn't know that. He's just guessing, right? And so
Mhm.
most people thinking, oh my God, he's got a tie on. He makes $1 million a year. He worked at Goldman Sachs. He's the president of the Fed in Minneapolis. No, he's got to be intelligent, right? No, it's not the case.
Okay.
Basically, what you see right now, I just thought of it. What you see right now is an erosion or destruction of the scam world.
Hmm.
Everything is basically some kind of quasi scam.
Sure.
Everything. Like these, I mentioned Black Lives Matter one time. Okay. And is it right for black people or Africans, descendants of slaves in the United States, wherever they are, is it right to treat them like shit and blow them away, even if they're, kind of stupid? Obviously not. Right.
Hmm.
So but the tendency for the institutions to squash the weak guys, this is what Karl Marx said, right? The tendency of the institutions to squash the weak guy with those without capital are it's always been very powerful. But now the weak guy is going to be able to get some means of defense.
Sure.
I don't know. It's going to take time. Uh, the indoctrination that takes place in school at a young age is really powerful. So that's why the Ashkenazi Jews are so intent on the schooling. They want every kid to go to school, and the first thing the kid learns is that sodomy is pretty good, and transgender, and then they're taught that the Holocaust, 6 million Jews, blah blah blah. I mean, it's just the same garbage. And Jews are really smart, and they deserve to rule and all this stuff. They have a higher IQ. Oh, come on, man! I mean, it's one big scam.
Sure. But that
Well, yeah, go ahead.
they need that to kind of for people to become more stupid,
Yeah,
and so they can
well,
control them. And the education system has kind of produced a lot of stupid people.
but there is no education system. I've argued, and basically we got to go back to the mind and the power of the brain, and which is what you're all about. So we need to have a discussion on that. There is no education. Education is a fraud.
I mean, and that was the point I was trying to make. That school actually does make you
Yeah, yeah.
deteriorate your brain.
Yes, it does. We can see that. I mean, I remember, I think it was about 15 or 20 years ago, I was talking to somebody who was expert in high school or elementary and high school education here in the United States or around the world, and he kept saying, yeah, it was someone at the Hoover Institution. He kept saying that we spend more and more money. I think he quoted me. He quoted him. I think he said something like we spend $600 billion a year on uh, high school and elementary education, in the United States nationally, or something like that. And yet, the performance of so-called students at age 18 goes down and down and down, right? There hardly anybody is really truly literate, apparently, except for the affluent classes. Most of these young people at 18, they can hardly read and write. Apparently, it's
Sure.
shocking. So what are they doing in school the whole time? And you ask them, oh yeah, and I read recently that it was at Ron Unz's site, unz.com, unz.com,
Hmm.
and I think he said that he was 50% of the American public in 1965, I can't remember when it was, kind of the height of the Cold War, didn't know that we were allies with the Soviet Union in World War II.
Amazing.
So, it's amazing, right? But it's not that amazing because the cost of information and knowledge was always very high.
Hmm.
So I
Yes.
think once the institutions are totally destroyed, schooling, universities, everything is just banks, everything, all these oppressive institutions are gone. Some of these businesses are good, but not many. Once they're gone, there will be a growth of something new, and those will be much more responsive to the new environment. And what we basically have, Khaled, is old stuff becoming obsolete and new stuff having to grow, but we're not there yet where the growth is seen. Don't you think? Now
Yes.
the old stuff is going to be obliterated, and it's just taking some time because it always takes time. I mean, for the Roman Empire, it took a couple hundred years at least, maybe even 1,000 years. But I think now we're at a faster speed, so any kind of transition or destruction is going to be probably decades and certainly not centuries. That's my theory, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm sure that the Ashkenazi Jew vision of all these idiotic ideas that they have, really kind of fanciful, idiotic crap, is all going to just be obliterated.
What I think,
I'll give you an example.
why they are so successful?
Well, okay, I'll give an example. Today, I watched an amazing video,
Mhm.
probably on CNN or wherever it was. I'm not sure it was, but you can find it. Kamala Harris, who's the vice president, of the United
Mhm.
States, Biden's vice president, she was at George Mason University, which is outside Washington, D.C., talking to some students. And one of the young ladies and the student in the university said something like this. I'm just paraphrasing her. Mrs. Harris or whatever, I'm really upset about Israel because what they're doing is genociding the Palestinian people. Basically, she said something like that, and which is obviously true, right? That's what they're
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's obviously true. And now Kamala Harris was clever enough to not dispute that, and she's obviously a pretty clever woman. She actually said, well, you're beginning to realize the reality. I can't remember exactly what she said, but she was basically kind of saying, okay, yeah, you're right, but I'm not going to say you're right. you know and boy, I tell you, the Ashkenazi Jews who were Zionists, they're just going down on her like they're bringing the shovels on her head. They're whacking her left and right, because how dare she not dispute that.
True.
Ashkenazi Jews have a right to kill Palestinian people, right? But
True.
obviously they don't.
Mm.
So it's all the bullshit is just being obliterated. And I can see that on TV. I mean, not TV, but internet. I can watch this woman, and she's got a right to speak to the vice president. So I mean, we're in a new era. And I saw today, this morning, I saw that some guy had a car bomb in the UK in Liverpool, or I don't know where it was. And I don't know. It's beginning. The guys, who knows what the motive is, but he's pissed off at the hospital or whatever it is. But some kind of car bomb.
Yeah, that seems a bit strange one to me.
Yeah,
One final question,
yeah.
Tom. Okay. I
Yeah.
think we discussed a little bit about the climate change last week, and I mentioned the Russian representative did not come there, or at least
Yeah.
Putin himself did not come there. So that looks like the Putin actually does not want to go back to the Soviet era again, and he does
No,
not want to create the Soviet state again. Okay.
no, he doesn't. No, I'm sure he doesn't.
So what do
Anyway,
you think? What do you think is Putin trying to do?
I think
Where does Putin want to go?
well, I
Which
think he's
direction?
he's he's got a big problem because I was astonished to read that he once said that the early Soviet government was pretty much 85-90% Jewish, Russian Jew.
Hmm.
So the whole thing was Jewish in the early days, and maybe after about 20 years it was a little bit less, but it was all Jewish. All right, he said that. Apparently, you go to uns.com, and I can get you a link. But so today, most of the big oligarchs or the big powerful guys are Jewish, of course. So
Okay.
most of them. And so he's got this problem of the Russian ordinary people are kind of trying to survive, and the guys who have all the wealth, vast amount of wealth compared to everybody else. I mean, the I think the wealth inequality in Russia, the Gini is quoted or whatever it's called, is really off the charts. You have to look it up. But so nobody can really do anything about it, and Putin's there to kind of keep everything together. So I don't know what he's going to do. But they're not going back to the Soviet Union. No way. in my opinion.
Okay. All right.
What do you think? What do you think?
I definitely think that he will not go back to the Soviet
Yeah,
side,
yeah,
and I think he will want to stay, keep the freedom that he has given the people, and will
yeah.
kind of continue on the democratic side of things. But
By the
having
way,
said that,
yeah,
I don't think he wants to allow the Jews kind of more power in Russia either. So if he can get away with it, he will reduce the number of Jews in the government as much as
yeah.
possible.
Ron
But
Unz. Yeah, go ahead.
Dmitry, on the other hand, is a pro-Zionist, so
Yeah.
pro-Jewish. So he's kind of keeping the balance between the two.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yesterday I read Ron Unz, and he's this Jewish American. He runs his website unz.com, unz.com. Probably you know about it.
Yes.
And uh, he actually says in this article, I think it was about the Holocaust, and it was about Holocaust denial. I think you can find it. It's pretty interesting. And he basically comes out. I think I said he's Jewish, so he comes out and says that, well, I really don't think the Holocaust happened the way they said it happened. It's exaggerated or whatever. But what's really interesting is that he actually admits that the Jews, these Ashkenazi Jews, are the biggest mass murderers in the history of the world by far because
Wow.
of the Soviet Union. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. He says that. He says they are the
Amazing.
biggest mass murderers. And this is just a fact, right? So it makes the Nazis look like, well, the Nazis, like I said last time to you, they were probably just retaliating.
Hmm.
So the real threat is this Bolshevism that these Jews, are constantly promoting. And of course, it's easy to promote because the little guy always does get squashed. Typically, not always, but usually, right? The little
Hmm.
guy ends up screwed. Is that true or
True.
not?
True.
Yeah. So it's easy to promote this idea. Hey, I'm going to take care of the little guy. Boy, I'm going to look out for his interests, right? What a joke. All right. Well, that's my answer. I mean, Ron Unz, look it up. Holocaust denial article. It's pretty long, but he actually states in there that it's pretty obvious that they were the biggest. And then he says the neocons, they're all Jewish, of course, in the United States. It was just where it was founded. The neocons have brought out this image of themselves being the heroes of the world, when in fact they're just mass murderers too. I mean, how many Arabs did they kill in the last 20 years with these wars, terrorism war? How many Arabs did they kill? Millions.
Well, close to 10 million or maybe above 10 million.
Yeah, and women and children.
True.
But if the Jews do it, it's okay. So I mean, that's the bottom line. Now, people still believe this stuff. The Jews are still good, because it's marketing. It's all
Hmm.
that's all it is, marketing. If they control the whole media enterprise, except me, you're talking to me because I've never was part of it. I would never go along with it. But if they control everything, they're just bombarding everybody every day with lie after lie after lie. I mean, come on. Oh my God, it's crazy. All right.
Last question.
Yeah.
What would happen to people like yourself if this tyrannic system
Continues.
continues, and the more and more system is kind of squeeze it placed on the
Yeah.
So what would happen to people like yourself and people who are writing, who are independent writers?
Well, I'd like to go into my personal life, but they tried to destroy me in the last 20 years. You
Hmm.
wouldn't believe it. If I told you what happened to my family. I mean, it's unbelievable. My financial independence has been totally destroyed deliberately, and I was reliant on my family, of course,
Sure,
and they totally destroyed it. I mean, if you knew what kind of horrors I had to put up with, it's unbelievable.
sure.
It's just like a dictatorship, and all I'm doing is putting information on the net. Anyway, I told you I worked for this newspaper, French newspaper, Libération. It's a
Hmm.
left-wing newspaper when I was in my 20s in Paris. And after about a year, I realized that no, Tom, you're not going to work for a newspaper, news organization. You're not going to work for anybody. You are going to be independent, because without that, I cannot have a mind. I cannot have a brain. I'm just going to be somebody else's tool.
Sure.
So I tried that approach. I mean, I tried that avenue or path. It was pretty difficult, but I managed. And then when the internet came, and I was just so excited. I mean, well, I thought, well, okay, Tom, you're really going to do some serious work here now. You know, I have the internet. I have a lot of experience. I know central bankers. I know foreign ministers. I've been all over the world. I'm old enough. I'm not immature. I'm going to do, and of course I did immediately. And my goodness, right away I could see that they were so angry and so petty and just they wanted to put me down. Obviously, they had no intention of ever allowing me to flourish as an independent journalist in the United States of America. No way, no chance. And I don't think it would
So
have been different.
what's the future for people like yourself?
Well, that's an excellent question. We should probably do another interview and just focus on that.
Okay.
Oh no,
Okay.
I'll
We'll do
answer it
that.
quickly. I think the future is destruction of everything, and that's why I have one of my Twitter accounts is destructive capital, destructive underscore cap, and so we have a destruction that's underway, and then liberation. It would be horrible. Of course, everybody will be horrified. Clearly horrified, and they're not going to be very happy. But once the destruction is serious enough, you're going to have a liberation, a true liberation. So I'm 63. I don't know how long this transition will go on, but if they don't, I've been through a lot. I've survived it. And I'm thinking that, if you can survive a lot of oppression like this, it makes you stronger. I know it's a cliche, but it probably is true. So you can emerge stronger and more experienced and more knowledgeable and wiser, probably. But maybe you can get killed too. I mean, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you very, very much,
Yeah.
Tom. We'll
Yeah.
leave it at
Great.
that.
Great
Okay.
to talk to you.
No
Okay.
problems. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.